Thank you. A pleasure to be here. So again, my name, Daniele Catteddu, CTO at the Cloud Security Alliance. And I guess I'm the one here to talk about AI, or the first one. What we're going to discuss today, it's an answer to a very simple question. Can GenAI or AI services be trusted? Now, the short answer, in my opinion, is no. So end of talk. Let's take a half an hour break. But I guess that we're going to go through a journey and figure out what's the answer to that question. About me, in fact, I've been in cyber for nearly 25 years at this point. So yes, I'm getting old. The last 14 of that have been with CSA. For those of you who are not familiar with Cloud Security Alliance, it's a global not-for-profit organization. At this point, I guess we are the largest cybersecurity community worldwide. We are talking about over 150,000 individual members, 500 corporate members, 100 plus chapters globally. And what we do, basically we do research. We produce best practices, proto standards, because we are not formally speaking on SDO, so a software standard development organization. But we do like to produce those practices that then are given to the community. Whatever we do is free of charge. So, please use and abuse of our website. It's not great, but that's a lot of good information in there. CSA was created as a not-for-profit in US. By now, as I mentioned, we have a global footprint, 4 headquarters. The one in Europe is here in Dublin. And Brian, where is it? Somewhere, is one of the members of the board there. So thank you, Brian, for serving. Now, we are called Cloud Security Alliance. So someone would expect that our focus is cloud, and in fact it is cloud, except that we started to open up and to extend the scope of our activities, around 2015, including blockchain, IoT, and then for the last 3-4 years we started to investigate giving a closer look into the AI space. This is the initial set of deliverable that you can find on our website. We got at this point over 27 research white papers, and then a few other activities that I'm going to discuss with you in a second. Some statement of support for our initiative that's not relevant. Now, let's back to the main question here. Every time we have been confronted with a new technology, we know that there is always that question to answer. It was that way back in the early days of cloud. It is now the same with GenAI. So can we trust the AI service provider, or better, can we trust the services that they are offering to us? And before we get there, I guess that we should define what a trustworthy cloud, AI service is. And a trustworthy AI service, as you can read there, is a system, is a service that is offered by a system that is robust, reliable, explainable, transparent, accountable, protect from our privacy and foster fairness, while complying with applicable laws and regulations. So that's a lot. Now, the situation, it looks to me very similar to what it was 20 years ago with cloud computing. And the question back then, can we trust the cloud? And if you recall, there were a lot of questions there. There was a lot of confusion about the new both business and technological model that it was offered. And if you remember, then the refrain was, this is about someone else's computer. There was an obsession about where the data is. Do you remember that? Is in the cloud? Where is my data? Where is my server? Etc. 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 The same issues and the same problems were about the governance of new services. Back in the days when we discovered these SaaS services, there was something completely new and something that, frankly, many companies are still struggling to govern. too many of them, in the order of thousands in every organization, and a lot of confusion on how to manage the risk around those applications. Very agile, very important and crucial sometimes within the ecosystem of our organizations, but very difficult to manage. And then, well, of course, the usual discussions that there are about how to approach a new technology. Shall we embrace it? Shall we make it part of our technological footprint, or shall we have a cautious approach to that? Now, the other big issues that was back in the days of cloud, it was about the complexity of the legal and regulatory landscape. If you remember those days, so there were, the initial phases, especially here in Europe, there was a lot of attention over the FISA Act. I don't know if you remember that. Quickly, that turned into kind of this duality between the GDPR and the Cloud Act, which still remains, is still a valid point, still a valid concern for any organization based in Europe that is using, the US hyperscalers. Very confusing also in terms of standards. We quickly went from a situation of scarcity of them. If you remember again, there was really no standard for cloud. The best approximation that many companies were using, it was about practices around outsourcing, which is not really what you want to use if you're approaching a new technological paradigm. The problem is that then very quickly we went into a situation where there were hundreds of standards. That issue was was very clear, especially in the space of compliance. And we have started to see this like trust center from the main hyperscalers and many other companies with 20, 30, 50, 100 logos and seals, to the point that in order to get an orientation of the level of trustworthiness of an organization, we were forced to get a PhD in laws and regulation. Now, the situation with AI, in my opinion, it's very similar. So we are on a very similar trajectory. There are a lot of commonalities to what we have seen back in the days of cloud and what we are seeing now today with AI, except that we are in presence of a technology that, as all of you are aware of, is much more disruptive. It's not anymore about someone else's computer, but we got to a point of someone else's brain or someone else's brain. And the type of risk that we are facing, like, for instance, the risk of over-reliance over the AI oracle, is really a scary one. The idea of becoming too lazy and being over-reliant over what AI can offer us is really a scary situation, especially in a landscape where we are all aware that we are not very capable to manage risk. And, that's not reassuring. Now, the other issues that we have seen, or we are seeing, are about a lot of confusion around the new risk. So the syndrome and obsession about where the data are is not anymore about where the data is, but who is using my data for training. Because we all know that once this data is in the machinery, we are not going to be able to take it out. We cannot untrain on a model and get out our data. The other issue are certainly about what often is referred to hallucination, which is simply about the physiological mistakes that AI is doing. So that's nothing. I mean, that's a feature, I would say, rather than a bug. It's part of the native approach of any GenAI services, except that we are relying on those services, and we need to figure out a way in which we are going to try to understand how to mitigate that issue of lack of reliance or lack of consistency in what we get out of AI. So we want to prevent AI from errors and mistakes and unwanted uses. Now, the other issues have been touched upon in previous speech this morning, and it's about understanding what is real from what is not. So the line in between is very thin at this point. The level of sophistication that we have seen in some of the deepfakes is so that even the most the smartest and the most the people that are most keen of getting details or with the high attention to details are in at loss. They don't understand. They cannot discriminate from what is real and what is not. Of course, there is the issue of shadow AI, as we had back in the days shadow IT. Now it's shadow AI, and it's simply the fact that we are in presence of a technology that is very easy to use. So everyone is using it, despite what it could be the official policy and the governance in place within an organization. And we're going to get back to the issue of governance there. We have seen in the very early days the popping up of the evil chatbots that quickly is becoming now evil agent, which is a topic that I would say it would deserve 1 hour or several hours of debate. But I guess we're not going to have time to debate about agents this morning. And then, of course, the usual refrain, should I embrace AI? Should I deny its existence? So there are, a lot of position in that spectrum. There are a lot of early adopters. There are a bunch of surveys that are telling us that we have had the most rapid adoption of this technology that we ever seen in any other previous technological waves. Not even with internet. The speed at which we are adopting AI is astonishing, even though I can see there are some very large gaps of people who are not simply using it. They don't even understand what it's all about, which is kind of a scary, very scary situation. Now, in this context, we have seen this debate going on for a while. From one side, we got we got countries, especially Europe, but also China and Brazil, that have already passed a regulation. On the other side of the spectrum, US, that is exposing an approach of the regulation, and in between, all the other countries that are trying to figure out if or what are the principles that should be guiding the development of an AI-driven society. And it's not just that, because in the background, there is a very heated debate within the both business and research community about what to do. So from the one side of the spectrum, you got people like Benjo, like Tegmark, like Hilton, were saying, well, we need to pause this stuff. We are developing a technology that we don't have any control over, and we better pause. We do some reflection, we understand what are going to be the governance mechanisms that are going to allow us to really reap the benefit of this technology without destroying the society in the process. On the other side of the spectrum, we got people who are saying, well, not really. Even though this technology is not fully mature, we need to build an AI-aware society. So we need to have early adoption. We cannot stop this machinery, because we need to get to the point where both society and technology are going to be ready together. Now, I'm not sure if that level of alignment will never exist, but I'm just reporting back to you what are the general position within this landscape. The situation with standards, if we draw the parallel with cloud, is very much in the infancy. So we are barely in the position where we are developing the vocabularies, we are developing the taxonomies, we are starting to build the frameworks that are going to allow us to control AI. But definitely, we can already see that there is a sort of gap in between what is meant to be the natural process of standard creation, which is based on consensus. Now, as we all know, creating consensus between a very diversified set of players, it requires times. And the speed at which we see this technology changing, it seems that it's not allowing us to have the luxury of that time. The other big item, which I'm going to touch very briefly on, it's about agentic AI. Now, this is possibly the scariest part for all of us in the cybersecurity community, because it's about autonomy. Autonomy of machines that at this point we are not able to control. So we are providing agency and we are providing the freedom to take decisions to agents of which we are not able to govern. Now, there's going to be a lot of discussions in the near future about the identity of the agents and how we should be reforming the old practices around identity and access management. This is like an area where I really hope that there's going to be much more investigation than I have seen so far. But the point being that we need to really strike a good balance between autonomy and control. Now, this is kind of describe a very complex situation. And in this complexity, what we have seen, well, it's our community to start asking us to chart a new course for the way in which we approach this technology. And what we got from our community, it was really kind of a request of creating or start developing a way in which we can define control, define governance, and then apply and measure it. The way we did it, or the way we're starting to do it, is basically to use a similar approach to what we did for cloud. Now, back in the early days of cloud, one of the issues that we have seen as one of the most critical problems, it was the lack of transparency within the ecosystem. For that, we built a program that is called STAR. STAR is an acronym for Security, Trust, Assurance, and Risk. And basically is the program for compliance, governance, and risk management that CSA has built. In the meantime, that was like 2011. From 2011 until now, the STAR program has been picking up quite a bit. By now has become a de facto standard for the cloud industry. There are countries like my own who is using STAR officially for the selection of providers for the public administration and in the area of critical information protection. There are few other countries that are taking that example, like Turkey, Dubai, well, UAE, Saudi. And then there are other countries which are using it for governing the security within the private sector. And I'm referring to Singapore and Israel, plus many others who are kind of using as a second choice within their national perimeter. What we decided to do was to kind of evolve that program and to build on the top of what we have already created. And this is for one very simple reason, that as I mentioned in the beginning, we see a lot of similarities between the trajectory that we have seen in cloud and what we are seeing now for AI. So we have the same layered approach in terms of structure of the service and the value chain. If you remember, for cloud, we got the three-layer approach: infrastructure, platform, and then software as a service. For AI, that's a very similar stack, at the bottom of which we got the cloud. So cloud, in most of the cases, is going to be the infrastructure that is going to support the operation of the brain, so of the model that we then use to operationalize our AI. So then we got the model as a second layer, then all the orchestration layer. So pretty much the same as a comparison of what used to be the platform as a service. In this orchestration layer is where you find agents, where you find RAGs, etc., etc. And then finally, we got the upper layer, which are the applications. So all those pieces of software that are either embedding AI in some way, shape, or form, or they are AI-first type of services. Same thing with the shared responsibility. So if you thought that the shared responsibility model nightmare it was over, well, I'm afraid that's not going to be the case. By the way, the shared responsibility model, it is, in my opinion, the single most the single biggest problem that we have seen so far in cloud. The lack of understanding of the model, the lack of confusion, the presence of confusion on who is responsible for what has been the cause number one of many of the security breaches that we have seen so far. Because in that void of responsibility, it is yours, it is mine, this is where exactly all the weakest, some of the weakest links are going to be surfacing. Now, for that, as I said, we wanted to take the experience and the positive feedback and the results that we got in the space of cloud to create a program with one intent, the one of measuring the level of trustworthiness of GenAI services. And when I do that, when I say that, I mean across the overall value chain of GenAI services. Because we want to understand the trustworthiness of the foundation layer, so the cloud, the trustworthiness of the frontier models, but also the trustworthiness of what is built on the top of those. And the way we're going to do it is, again, by taking taking stock of what has been already done out there in the industry. So you might know of the existence of standards like ISO 42001, which is not a security standard, it's a management system for GenAI. That's nothing to do with security, even though it calls back important aspects of governance and transparency, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is part of the solution, for sure, but as ISO 27001, which is the generic standard for security, it was not the right answer for cloud. 42001 is not the final answer or the only answer for the trustworthiness of GenAI. In our experience, there is something more needed. So we started to combine standards and then to develop our own in order to build that extra layer of AI specificity that is, in my opinion, very much needed in order to determine if what we are using is something that can be really trusted. This is basically the timeline and the roadmap that we have built. So we have released in July our AI control matrix, which is basically the companion of for the cloud control matrix. For those of you, again, that are not familiar with that, that's a framework that is a framework of control objectives dedicated to cloud. Again, at the factor standard in the industry, but not fit for purpose for the GenAI case. So we built a dedicated control framework, and I'm going to provide details about that in a few minutes. Well, in a minute. We launched a validated approach, so a way to use GenAI in order to do the validation of the assessment. We launched a week ago the self-assessment, which is the layer one of our program, which is going to be structured in 3 layers. Level 1 is going to be self-assessment. So you tell me what is your security posture for the service you're offering. The level above, it's about third-party audit over the service, and then the final step is the continuous evaluation of that service. Now, the level 2, so the third-party auditing-based approach, it's work in progress. I can anticipate, and I already did, that it's going to be based on the foundation of the 42000 and 27001 and augmented with an additional set of controls and auditing mechanisms. And this is due to release sometime around Q3 next year. So for that, stay tuned. And let us know whenever it's ready if you have any feedback. Now, as I mentioned, the fulcrum, the foundational piece for this program is going to be the set of controls. We all know that in order to have good governance, you need controls in place. Now, what we did is to create, as I said, to use the old tricks and experience that we have learned over cloud, reapply them, and modify whenever needed. The result has been a set of controls structured in a number of domains, 18 to be precise, and I'm going to give you some details in a second. Now, the general idea behind the AI control framework is really to be expert-driven. It was created by a working group composed by over 50 experts, absolutely vendor agnostic. We do not refer to any specific technology. We want our controls to be at the level of abstraction that provides general guidance for any possible implementation, regardless that you are on a like Google environment, or if you are on Amazon plus OpenAI, etc., etc., etc. And of course, consensus-based. Now, I must say that I was especially surprised by the speed at which we were able to deliver this framework, because I would expected much more heated debate around some of the controls that we have included. There wasn't, so that is a good sign that, especially from the expert community, there is a good alignment around what is supposed to be relevant within a framework of controls for GenAI. In terms of scope, well, the scope, as you can imagine, it covers the full value chain of a GenAI service. So from the very foundation, so cloud, to the foundation model, orchestrated services, GenAI application, and of course, data. So that is the full spectrum of coverage for the framework. And in terms of shared responsibility, as I mentioned, we took what we learned from cloud and modified it based on the needs that we saw appearing in the market. So this is a more kind of precise and detailed description of what we believe is going to be the shared responsibility model for GenAI, subject to change as everything that we have done so far. Let's not forget that what we released in July, it was version 1 of this framework. My expectation is that we are going to see version 1.1 very soon, because we all see that this technology is changing very rapidly. For instance, the coverage over agent and agentic security and agentic workflow is only partially covered in version 1. And we are already working in augmenting that section around agents, because as you know, everyone has learned so far, this is the most appealing of the implementation of AI. So the idea that you can use like autonomy and have, removing the human from the loop, which for many has been, the number one problem for cybersecurity. Not that I agree with that, but certainly we all know that, humans are, error prone, and definitely there's going to be some advantages in introducing agentic AI in our security workflows, simply because it would, seem unfair for us to fight against AI supported attacks without having the aids of AI on our side. This is the structure, as I mentioned. So 18 domains, pretty much the same that we have for cloud, plus one dedicated domain on model security. A total of 243 controls. For each one of them, we got a number of components. So we got the type of control, we got the applicability of that control depending on which actor and which part of the supply chain you're in, the relevance in terms of life cycle, the threat category, and then the architectural components. In addition to that, we got a number of different components, if you like, for each one of control. So we got the core control with this specification, we got implementation and auditing guidelines, and then we got mappings to other standards in a way that if you have already adopted a different standard, you can go back and link those controls to ours. This is some information for you to download the bundle. And before I get to my conclusions, I would like to have a call for action, if you like. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, CSA is a volunteer-based organization. The results that we have achieved so far are the result of our community collectively bringing their brains together and working for a greater good. So my request to all of you today is very simple. Go on our website, download our artifacts, especially the AI control framework, review it, break it, and then come back to me and tell me what doesn't work. Because that's basically the only way we have in order to get better to the next cycle of review. Now, in terms of conclusion, of course, growing urgency to establish a reliable approach to compliance and especially to governance of GenAI services. We know that the technology that we are using is going to revolutionize our life in many ways. It's going to enter into the very fabric of our life, we want it or not. And we need, at high speed, a way in which we can make informed decisions, because this is all about. Making informed decision whenever we are picking up the service that we are going to include in our technological stack. And then, the only issue that I see, which is a kind of paradox, is that it seems to me that we are quickly moving into a situation where AI is going to be used for auditing as well. So we are going to use AI in order to audit AI. The problem is that we end up in a situation where we are using a technology to evaluate the level of trustworthiness of itself without having neither a measure of what trustworthiness means in numbers and quantity, nor if we can trust the technology we are using for that actual audit, which is kind of weird. So again, we need to speed up the pace of developing solutions to keep us safe. Clearly, it's not something that a single company or single individual can do on its own. We would like to be at the center or part of the community that is going to develop those frameworks. So please help us in doing that. And with that, I would like to thank you, and it's been a pleasure.